education. As most of you know, um, education is a huge component in what we do at Venture Cafe. We ourselves are not educators. However, we are education enthusiasts. And so we do have Karla here from the Equity Institute. Karla, if you would like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what Equity Institute is, how you do it, and what you do. Fantastic.
Hey, everybody. I think I know many of you all here because you are all neighbors, as I am in the CIC office. So it's nice to see some familiar faces here and some new folks here. I don't have a presentation, so that's, I think, a good thing since you've probably been online all day. But I will tell you a little bit about who we are. We're a education-based nonprofit organization that works with school districts to provide innovative solutions on how to build more diverse, equitable, and inclusive learning and professional environments. Equity Institute was just born this year in January. We actually came out of a grassroots initiative called Edu Leaders of Color Rhode Island about 3 years ago. It was grassroots. We had no money, and we were just basically really addressing all the inequities and injustices that we see in the school. And one of them particularly was around teachers of color recruitment and retention. And so I'm a former teacher, so it was really an organic and authentic place to start because it felt right. I was pushed out of teaching about 4 years ago and had to, navigate different spaces and eventually started this organization. So now we are here in Rhode Island. Most of our work is within the state and in urban communities. We also work with suburban and rural communities as well, and we're just starting to expand our work nationally.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of recruit? You said you work in urban communities, you work but you're starting to work nationally. What type of schools or institutions are you looking for?
Yeah, so when we don't, we honestly don't, we don't seek schools and institutions. They kind of come to us. I think whereas I kind of chimed in a little bit towards the end of some of the conversations, and I heard a lot of just really acknowledgement of what's going on today and the racial tensions in our society that's really coming to the forefront of all our everyday lives. And we can see the inequities kind of exacerbated because of COVID-19 and then the race. And I think just people are psychologically, we're all have been, our lives have been disrupted. And so I think it adds this other layer of tension, of feeling like, this is the time things need to change. And so I say that all because schools now are really, and organizations and other institutions are really being mindful about how to build equity. We throw that word around very loosely. I don't think many people actually know what it looks like, feels like, and sounds like in practice. And so we work with districts specifically to unpack that and to not only build those skills needed from our teachers and our leaders, but also to look at the policies that are already in place and that have been in place for decades, right? And have not changed. And so we push schools to look at change from a transformational standpoint, not a reform standpoint, because we know, honestly, reform it doesn't work, right? It's just kind of like putting a Band-Aid on one problem, and the cut it never heals, right? And it's like we need to really disrupt the systems that we live in because they've been built on centuries of institutional racism. And so for us, we know that the perspective that we share with folks is we know the systems were designed a certain way intentionally. They were, if you take a look at the history of things, it was intentionally made to divide certain people. And so if people designed it, we know that people hold the power and the ability to redesign a system that actually works. It won't happen, within a year. It's like a long-term commitment. So we do, when we work with districts, we do emphasize this long-term commitment to creating change, because that change is uncomfortable, it's messy, it's complex. And so whenever, you know, you have that formula, most people want to run away and not do the work. And so our partnerships are usually with folks that want to do the work and that are ready to do the work. And so we look for leadership to be invested and have a real commitment to creating change.
So you said something at the very beginning there that, as you kind of talked through, really meant something to me. Could you define equity in the Equity Institute way? Because I think what you said about how, you know, people throw it around, but we don't all think of it the same way.
Yeah, so it is up to your organization as a collective group to really define and unpack that and create shared language around equity and what it means, right? And so we as an org, we've been working you know, with our team to define it. And our definition means that every learner has access to opportunities that are aligned with their needs and support their academic and social emotional success. We not only define it, but we also assert that equity in education resembles a system in which group identities, and we explicitly name those identities, race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion, class, etc., are empowering and essential components in maximizing educational potential. We know that identity is critical to the way that we learn. Everything we know is based on our experiences, on our cultural backgrounds, on things that we've internalized. It makes us who we are. It shapes our lens. So this is cognitive level of understanding that. And as practitioners and leaders, I think it's important to name that. A second piece of asserting equity in education is social circumstances. So we know that kids come in with a baggage, right? When I was a teacher, I had 28 kids. And they all came in with, you know, not only their lived experiences, but their reality, right? And a lot of that had to do with housing, access to healthy foods. And so we acknowledge that social circumstances are organized or need to be organized in a way that supports the well-being of all learners. And also, we can be doing change in the classroom and developing, you know, practices. However, if we are not holding our leaders, our legislators, our political figures accountable to pass policies that support the mandates that we need, we're not doing, it's not enough work. We could be doing all the work on the ground and like really working ourselves to the ground. And if that change is not coming from a legislative level, it will not work, right? So we believe that public policies and laws need to promote equitable outcomes in education. For example, fair funding formula, culturally relevant curriculum mandates, anti-racism pedagogy mandates, and pipelines for teacher diversity. We believe in this because in Rhode Island, we know that we have about 5 to I think 7%, now it might have gone slightly higher now, teachers of color in the whole state. When you look at a district like Providence, you have 91% students who identify as people of color or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, right? And then you have 87 to 89% teachers who are white. And it's not, you know, we don't say this to say you cannot have white teachers. Absolutely not. You absolutely can. And when we say we need more teachers of color, we're not saying that only because you're a teacher of color, you're going to be great. We need qualified, well-experienced teachers of color. And so we hold higher ed institutions accountable for that as well and look at their programs, their teaching programs. Like, what are you teaching, you know, our teachers who are coming out? But that data point does say something. It tells a story, and the story is there's a reason why there's 87%, you know, white teachers in our district, and it's not matching our population. And so there are barriers in place, long existing barriers. And so one of our goals is really to address that, to raise awareness, to advocate for fair certification process. I had to take, before I became a teacher, I taught for a year without a certification. And the school gave me a year to, I don't know, study and take the test, the praxis test, which we know are biased and racist and just really don't even indicate the level of intelligence that you have or the competencies that you need as a teacher in the classroom. I took the math about 7 times, and the science test I took about 5 times before I passed it. And it obviously did something to my self-esteem. I could not pass it. And I was like, why can't I pass this test? This is ridiculous, right? But I did. And the trick was I studied with a colleague of mine who taught me how to test, which when we talk about standardized testing, this is a whole nother conversation. Really, it's just trying to trick you. And also like think about like, how do you eliminate the answer that's completely wrong? How do you eliminate the answer that's almost right, but not really right? It makes no sense to me personally, in my opinion. And he taught me a trick. If you don't know the answer, choose C. And that's what I did. And I passed. So that's the story in terms of standardized testing. And I got my certification. Unfortunately and ironically, when I got my certification that summer, I couldn't find a teaching job, and I had been pushed out of the school where I taught. And so I had no job for the summer. And that's when I went into education consulting with a tech focus. But it was the same story there in terms of a gap in equity. There was this huge gap when it comes to technology and education and using apps and using Google Classroom and all these fancy things. When you're not when you're not doing this work from an equity lens, from an anti-racism lens, it doesn't work. It hurts certain groups of people, and that needs to stop. We've done it for way too long, and we need to, as a collective community, really be thinking on how do we change that together.
Yeah, definitely. Now I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about kind of the atmosphere in Rhode Island. More specifically, I know you're looking for national expansion, but what drew you to Rhode Island, or why did you found Equity Institute here?
I'm from Rhode Island. I grew up here. I grew up in Providence in the West End. I was born in El Salvador, but grew up here, and so it only made sense to start where we were. And to be quite honest, nobody was addressing the teacher diversity before we started Edu Leaders of Color. And so I think like if we backtrack a little bit to shift a little bit from your question, we started in Rhode Island. This is a place I love and hold dear to my heart. But what we wanted to do was create, with Edu Leaders of Color, when we started 3 years ago, is create a networking space, an ecosystem that really connects people from all different backgrounds, both specifically focusing on groups of people that have been, underestimated. This is what Arlen Hamilton's word, right? Underestimated, marginalized, and really uplift them. Because for a long time, we're not seeing much messaging around how to uplift, students and people of color throughout our state. Had a lot of friends who came from other states who were, Black, Latino, and would leave. They would come here and study and they would leave. There was just no community for folks. And I don't know that there still is. And so Edu Leaders of Color, we held monthly meetups every month in different spaces all throughout, mostly Providence. We, served beer, wine, all that great stuff, and food, because we know that's important for folks. And we networked, and we raised the voices of folks that you might not hear of because they don't have the power, or they don't have the privilege or the resources, or whatever it is. And so that's the lens that we operate from. We're like, who is not being uplifted? Whose voice is not being heard? Okay, let's create that. Let's use our own power and privilege that we have now to uplift those voices. And so soon, you had the governor come in, you had, the mayor, you had the commissioner, you had lawyers. It wasn't just teachers, and it wasn't just administrators. It was a community of people. And we played, hip hop and music, and it was just not your non-traditional kind of like, I don't know, I can't look for another word, but boring kind of, meeting where it's like, this is the normal, like the main, dominant culture kind of vibe. It was a different kind of vibe, and we were doing good work, and we were networking. People got, connected to board opportunities to be on the boards. People were like, hey, we need to hire somebody. We became like the folks that people come to where they needed to hire somebody of color. Hey, do you know somebody? We need diversity. Do you know somebody that we can hire? And for school districts, we became the folks that they would call like the Olivia Pope, right? Of like racism. Like, it was like, hey, Karla, we just had this racist incident in our school. Can you come help us? And so that's kind of, Rhode Island is small. So that's our ties to here, and we're committed to the work here. Like everybody says, Rhode Island is small. Let's try it here. Why not? Why can't we fix a problem and model for the rest of the country here? We have, because we're so small, we have that space to do it. And so I think that kind of answers the why Rhode Island.
Yeah. We're small, but we also have, incredibly rural areas. We have suburban areas. We have huge wealth disparities, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
And Absolutely. We have city areas that need all the money that the school system can be given, so that they can make both the physical changes that need to happen with the buildings, but also the investments in teaching staff and students. This is incredible. I mean, I want to thank you for coming on. Before I ask you our last question, I just want to, is there anything else you want to share with is there any way we can support Equity Institute or Eduleaders of Color, both from the Venture Cafe side, but also from the general public? What do you need, kind of?
I think in terms of support, like you all have already been really supportive of our work. I think that if anything, what I look for institutions and organizations that are doing this work is to really, it's not more so, yeah, I guess it is part what I need and part what I think you all need, everybody needs to, is to really do that internal work, man. If like you're saying you believe in this, you gotta do the work. You gotta do the work. So I think that is my biggest thing to like institutions and organizations, because I think it's so critical to understand, in practice, what it looks like when we do this work. And it's hard. And like I said, it's really hard. But if we're going to create change, you have to be, and you're going to walk the walk. Folks really need to do that work internally. And I know like for us, we're still doing work, and we're still figuring out how to do this work with like real like fidelity, and really be acting on the things that we say that we're talking about. The other thing is just like, networking and building that network. I think like before, Kristen was talking a lot about founders. Yeah, there's not a lot of founders. I mean, I'm a community advisor for Nellie Mae Foundation. And one of the things that, we're talking about is philanthropy and how to change philanthropy in education to fund more organizations led by BIPOC folks. Because the truth of the matter is, when we're talking about these issues, the people that are most closest in proximity to the issues have the solutions and are the real innovators. And so how do you as an, org, when we're talking about innovation, technology, funding, all these things, how do we reach out to the people that are not being represented, right? In those real ways, right? And not also tokenizing, avoiding tokenizing folks and just saying like, yeah, we have like one Black person, here, yay, but really being about the work. So that's I think what that's what I need from the whole world, because this exists everywhere.
We're definitely working on it. We have some of our own internal staff trainings, but we're also thinking about ways that we can support training for our community in general. And then my final question for you is, this is just the most trying time that most of us have been living through with you know, the police brutality murders that are going on,
Yeah.
COVID, you know, school inequalities that, you know, are finally being addressed in Providence. So can you describe kind of your leadership journey? How are you leading in this time when, you know, it seems like every other day we're being hit?
So let me say something, Amy. So, you know, there's close research that shows how folks who are really invested in this work and on the ground and doing this work every single day, like we all have health issues. I mean, it shows there's a number of increase, you know, in Black and Latino leaders doing grassroots work. And I understand that. I really, really do. And I was having this conversation with colleagues. I don't sleep well at night. It's just a mess. Psychologically, it's a mess. This is trauma. And if we don't talk about trauma and healing, oh man, it's an added inequity on groups of people. So in terms of leading, what we're doing in our organizations is I try to balance how much I can take, right? I don't watch videos. I can't do it. I can't stomach it. It just makes me upset. But it also fuels my passion. In the line of work that we do, there's no separation because the line of work that we do, it's not like I can shut it off at 5 because it's aligned with the values in my life. So I'm constantly thinking about it in every aspect of my life. So what we want to do now is think about how as a leader, in terms of my team, how do we take care of ourselves, just like mentally, physically? So we're now going to be adding like a once a month like self-care day, and doing some like I think it's like traumatic healing and collective healing with our teams. And so we're contracting some folks from the community that kind of do this because they know also what it feels like. We're going to be going on retreats every quarter. So we're just going to try to really take care of ourselves. And I think we need to like really name that and say that it has some health implications for folks that are doing this work, psychologically, physically, and all that. So we lead and we're happy to lead and we love what we do, but we're also leading in being cognizant of taking care of ourselves as well. Anybody who knows us out there know that they can reach out to us. They can, you know, talk to us about certain things. We have about 3 big initiatives really developing. We have, you know, our trainings that we do with districts, and we're online all day, and you know how that takes a toll. We have this EduLead fellowship program where we're creating a pipeline for teachers of color. And then we have, you know, EduLeaders of color, which we're still hosting monthly virtually and trying to be creative as to how we host these like networking kind of experiences for our community. So, you know, lead with the heart, lead with passion, but do not, you know, ignore our well-being. And so it's one of the reasons I kept this office here, right? It's a nice office, and we have perks here. And so we really want to, like, that's for us, like separating the home from working. It's important for us. And so we try to take care of ourselves as much as best and as much as we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Karla, you're amazing.
You're all amazing. Thank you.
Do you think we're going to, you know, with this Providence takeover, this is getting more specific into one thing. Do you think there's going to be a systemic, positive solution out of all this? Or you still on the...
I think we're taking a step towards it. And I think that, you know, I truly believe that, you know, I believe in just, you know, what's happened is meant to happen. And so we have these leaders now who I think are good and who I do think genuinely care about our students. You can't undo a system that's been broken for decades in a year or 2 or 3. Now add a pandemic, it's impossible. So that's why I think it's a step. And I think that it takes people to come together and to really practice their empathy muscle, to understand that people are trying their best right now. Everybody is. We're all going through something, and there's a beauty in that, and it's painful at the same time, because we're all experienced. You have kids, Avi, I know you have kids. I have kids. Like, he hasn't gone to daycare since March. He's going through some things. I have a 14-year-old about to start high school. He's going to be in his room learning. Like, I got to work still, and then you have people who, have lost jobs, or who have gotten COVID, or who have died from COVID. And so everybody's experiencing something right now. So really practicing that empathy muscle is so important, so that we can be working together, I think, to find solutions. And I think this is the moment right now. It is the moment, and it's historical. And so it's like, again, balancing those difficulties and those challenges, but also looking for those points of like ideation, innovation. What can we do, and what can we do together?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I, appreciate you thinking of me and thinking of our work, and supporting us always, because you always have.